switch your camera off for the moment and switch it on when you are going to ask your question. Are you okay with that? Thank you. And all of this is necessary because the meeting is currently being webcast live. We've got a lot of people here this evening. Along the back row are our senior officers. Simon Dale,
Just get him to stop a minute.
Sally Watkins, Chief
Apologies, there's a problem with this stream. Could we just pause for a moment?
We can. I just got into my flow.
I'm not sure why. So no sound. It's not coming out on my phone. Does your it's okay now. It's okay. Sorry, can we start again?
Right. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are going to start it again because there was a technical fault, which might mean that some of you have missed a portion of what's already been said. So, second time lucky.
It's okay.
My name is Stephen Conway, I'm the Deputy Leader of the Council. I've been chairing this meeting of the Executive because unfortunately the Leader of the Council, Clive Jones, is ill today. Could you, as a housekeeping matter, ensure that your mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off? And if you're participating via Teams, when you're not speaking or being asked to speak, could you please mute your microphones? Please also note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. We have this evening a lot of officers here to support the Executive, going round the table, round the back, behind the Executive members who are sitting at the front row. We have Simon Dale, the Interim Director of Place and Growth, Sally Watkins, the Chief Operating Officer, Helen Watson, the Director of Children's Services, Lucian Bowker from Democratic Services, Priya Patel from Democratic Services, Susan Parsonage, the Chief Executive, Matt Pope, Director of Adult Social Care, Andrew Martin, the Assistant Director of Governance, and Graham England, Chief Deputy Chief Executive and Chief Finance Officer. So those are the senior officers present around the front table with me and my executive colleagues. And if I can start on that side and work my way round, Ian Shenton, who is the executive member for remind myself what is the executive member for. Ian is executive member for Environment, Sport and Leisure. Paul Fishwick, who's the executive member for Active Travel, Transport and Highways. Vincent Ferris, who's the executive member for Planning and the Local Plan. Imogen Shepherd-Dufay, next to me here, executive member for Finance. Prue Gray, executive member for Children's Services. Rachel Bishop-Firth, executive member for Equalities, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty. Then we have Sarah Kerr, executive member for Climate Emergency and Resident Services. And finally, David Hare, executive member for Adult Services. Health and Being in Adult Services, who is called that. So that's the cast for you, and now we will begin the meeting with apologies. We have an apology, as I've already said, from Clive Jones. Are there any other apologies for absence? Well, the other than one. So I think we can now proceed to the minutes of the previous meeting. And we are asked to confirm the minutes, the executive meeting on the 16th of February. Those are in your agenda on pages 7 to 16. All members content to approve those minutes as an accurate record. Those in favour, please show.
and of the whole.
I have personal interest in item 107 because my family's in Ukraine and staying with us.
And I have interest in number 113 and share the board's director of Optimus.
Thank you, everyone, for declaring those interests. In the interest of complete fairness and openness, when we come to item 113, I think it would be inappropriate for those who have declared an interest as non-executive directors of the local authority companies to actually be involved in the vote. And I'm going to ask my colleague Imogen to lead on that item. And I think it looks better we do not do that. Insofar as Rachel's declaration is concerned, I don't think that in any way impairs your ability to speak and vote on item 107. Thank you. Right, if we can move on now to item 95, that's a statement from the leader. Well, as you know, the leader's not here, so I'm going to make a brief statement in his absence. Although this is not the last executive meeting of the year, because we've arranged a special meeting in April to help progress the Finch Hampstead and Twyford neighbourhood plans, I should like to take this opportunity to record my thanks to those whose work has helped the residents and businesses of the borough in a very challenging year. And I want to start by thanking my executive colleagues and the senior officers who have supported them so well through this year. But I want to extend my thanks to non-executive councillors of all parties for their work on council committees and working groups, and to all the officers of the council for their dedicated service to the community. And I should also like to express my gratitude to all our partner organisations for their important contributions. I'm referring particularly here to the town and parish councils, voluntary and charitable sector, health providers and educators, and the youth council. Only this afternoon helped us to develop our young person's housing strategy. This year has been a tough year for many of our residents and businesses, with the cost of living crisis and interest rate rises that have put up the cost of mortgages. It's been a challenging year for the council too, tougher, I think, than anyone can remember. We have faced double-digit inflation, increased demand for services, shortfalls in anticipated income, and increases in interest rates. The government gave us a small amount of additional core funding, which nowhere near covered inflation, let alone increased demand for council services. In such difficult circumstances, other councils have effectively gone bankrupt, leading to deep cuts in services and much higher council tax. But by taking tough decisions on income generation and savings, Wokingham has been able to produce a sound, forward-looking and compassionate budget which supports those in the greatest difficulties. We can all be justly proud of this achievement, and many more too numerous to list this evening. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to item 96, which is public question time. And we have a question from Paul Stevens to Lindsay Ferris. Paul was going to be here in person, I thought, but I can't help but notice he isn't. I can't see him on screen either.
No, I don't think he's able to attend.
Well, I think Paul will receive a written reply from Lindsay. I'm sorry he wasn't able to be here. I hope everything's okay with him. If we can move on then, Ian is here, Ian Pitter. If you can just, you know the drill, I think, Ian. You put your microphone on and then you really speak and tell me to move on.
Thank you, Jess. Councillor Conway. This question is for Councillor first. For the benefit of the broadcaster, we'll read it. The previous Conservative administration had a proposal for the Pinewood site and working without. This consisted of rebuilding sports facilities on one half of the site and building houses on the other. About 4 years ago, I and Lindsay Ferris, as Lib Dem councillors, met with Woking without Parish Council to assure them that should the Lib Dems leave Woking Borough Council, we would not build houses on the private site, but that we would at least offer a much longer lease than they currently have. As he is now the executive member with responsibility for the local plan update in the Lib Dem administration, can Councillor Ferris confirm that our promises to Woking without Parish Council still stand?
Thank you, Ian, for your question. Pinewood has not been promoted into a plan process, nor has the land been assessed for its potential suitability for development within the local plan process. What might be causing an issue is that separate to the allocation of land for development, the local plan revised growth strategy consultation 2021 included a proposal to identify Pinewood as a site for self-funded regeneration. The purpose of the proposal was to set planning framework to support investment into improving the site and buildings. In summary, I fully acknowledge that Pinewood is home to highly valued community facilities. The site has not been promoted for housing development, and there are no proposed for housing development in the emerging local plan. Matters of property and leasing do not come under planning or the local plan. However, I understand that a new long-term lease for Pinewood site has been agreed in principle and is with its solicitors to complete. So yes, our promises made to Woking Parish still very much stand.
Thank you, Lindsay. You've got a supplementary question, Ian.
Thank you, Lindsay. Just two cut throughs on the back, if I may. Is this lease for the complete site, which it is, and therefore it kills off the previous Conservative administration's intent for that?
Yes, the lease is for the complete site, and I believe it's for 30 years. Clive and I did visit Woking down there at the Pinewood Centre sometime in the sort of middle of 2022, and we had a tour of the site, and we had a number of Woking without councillors there, and we asked them whether they would be interested in potentially taking on the site. They said that they were in discussions on the lease at the time, and they felt that to get the lease side of things confirmed and finished was what they focused on at the time.
Thank you very much, Ian. And our next question is from Chaz. Thank you. Our next question is from Chaz Hockin. Chaz, I think, is on the line. Have you got a chance?
Yes, I am. Will you not take questions when the subject matter comes up?
No, we take the questions here at this point in the agenda, Chaz.
Right, okay, fine. My question is in relation to proposed changes to refuse collection. It's suggested that 99% of curbside properties could accept a wheelie bin. I live in a row of 4 terraced houses built in the 1980s. Whilst I, as I live in the one end of the row, have no problem with wheeling a bin from my back towards the curb, 2 houses in the middle will have difficulty. There is a path from the rear of their gardens to the front of the houses, but it is very difficult for the current residents. A single mum with a young child and another an elderly person. For them to wheel their bins along the length of the garden, along the overgrown uneven path. It's also not practical to wheel the bins through their houses. Will these residents be exempt from having a wheel bin, and if so, how do we go about it?
Your question is directed at Ian, Chaz, so I'm going to ask Ian to answer it.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your question, Chaz. We do recognise that there will be properties in the borough which can't accommodate a wheel bin, and there will therefore be a full survey undertaken to assess suitability. In terms of your specific inquiry, a site visit will be conducted to discuss further with the residents affected to establish accessibility. If it's determined that a wheel bin would not be suitable, then the properties would remain on bank collection.
Chance, have you got a supplementary question?
Yes, how does the new proposals fit in with the national guidelines that are proposed about having numerous different, I believe up to 6 different recycling or 6 different bins? Are we going to, is Wokingham going to do that, have to do it again in a few years after that?
In all honesty, we don't quite know yet. They have been rather slow, the government that is, have been rather slow at letting the information out. We are expecting to know fairly soon. They will be mandating probably further separation from what we have at the moment, which is why we're not going straight to a second wheel bin for recycling. Because if we do that, it's probably wasted investment because we're going to have to do some further separation of the recycling streams. We don't know exactly what. We may even end up having to collect glass at the curbside, but that would be a significant on-cost, which we would obviously be asking the government to find the money for. I can't be any more precise than that because we are waiting for tablets of stone to be handed down from Whitehall.
Okay, so it's wait and see. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chance, and thank you, Ian. The next question is from Tim Holton. Very familiar to many of us. Good evening, Tim.
Yes, good evening to you all.
Would you like to ask your question of Ian?
Okay, so my question is, why should residents bother responding to consultations when in the case of waste collection, you ignore 76% of those who responded, indicating they did not like the proposal to change the fortnightly waste collection?
Thank you for your question, Tim. I'm afraid that it contains inaccuracies. Firstly, our proposal is to continue weekly collections with food waste every week, the recycling and residual waste taking turns in an alternating pattern. Secondly, just 26% of those who responded to the consultation indicated that they did not like the proposal. 24% liked it, 43% found it acceptable, and 7% were neutral. To characterise that combined 50% as not liking it is fallacious, as they had the option to tick don't like, but did not do so. They made that choice for a reason, and their choice should not be misrepresented. And overall, there was a clear majority in favour. The aim of the consultation is to assess views and inform the decision-making process to ensure the best outcome for the council and residents. It is not a referendum, and views expressed are unlikely to be unanimous. The consultation on waste outlined the council's financial position, and the questions gave 4 options to agree or disagree with the proposals. The council must make savings of more than £25 million over the next 3 years due to a continued reduction in government funding and rising costs, particularly supporting those most in need. Continuing with weekly collections would increase costs and not improve our response to the climate emergency which the council has declared.
Have you got a supplementary, Tim?
Yes, I have. I do find it strange that you count those that thought it was acceptable, that were in favour, because not what that made redundant. Although I accepted it, and I certainly wasn't in favour of being made redundant. Anyway, my supplementary. Will you be deferring voting on this item until after the debate at full council on Thursday? Or will this be another example of this bench not listening to members, and more importantly, residents?
The executive is the decision-making body as far as waste collection is concerned.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tim. We now have one other public question, and this is from Andy Bailey, and it's to Rita Ferris. Andy, are you there?
I don't think he's able to attend.
It appears that Andy is not able to be with us, so he will receive a written response from Lindsay. Thank you. That, I think, ends the public questions. We now move on to member question time, and I think we only have one member question, that's from Gary Cowan. Hello Gary, good evening.
Good evening. I'm having trouble with my phone as usual, so I'm not as high tech as you people are, so there goes. In the provision of the 2011 Localism Act, then I'm told the decision maker is not to be taken to have appeared or appear to have had a mind closed from making a decision, just because the decision maker has previously done anything that directly or indirectly indicates what the decision maker took or would might take in relation to an explanation in plain English, which might change, which might change in the law. Under S25, a member will be able to express strong opinions and even tell people that he or she intends to vote in a particular way without fear of a challenge based on predetermination. This would suggest that the existing constitution, supported by this administration and Conservatives, is in fact actually illegal. Would you agree that the administration has acted illegally and continues to do so by support to the constitution that applies that the predetermination is a matter that can be referred to the Standing Court? Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for that question. First, I think I have to say I don't agree that the council has acted illegally, and I'll try to explain why. It is quite a complex issue that you've raised, so forgive me if the answer is quite long and detailed. The WVC Member Code of Conduct, which I think you're referring in the final paragraph of your question, is based almost in its entirety on the Local Government Association's model code of conduct and was agreed by full council on 22nd of July 2021. You are correct that bias and predetermination are not explicitly mentioned in the code of conduct. However, the code's provisions on declarations of interest are relevant to predetermination and are about ensuring councillors do not take decisions where they or those close to them stand to lose or gain improperly. The rules around predetermination are complex, which is why the government at the time, in 2011-12, brought in section 25 of the Localism Act that you referred to, Gary. It was meant to clarify matters. The concept that the councillor as a decision maker should approach a decision with an open mind remains a key principle of public law. The Localism Act does not abolish predetermination as such. Instead, it provides a protection from challenge by identified specific behaviour which cannot be regarded as evidence of a closed mind. And you quoted the words just because, and the use of those words in the Act is meant to limit protection to things the councillor has done or said to indicate what he or she took or would or might take. The purpose of clarifying the law is to ensure councillors can be involved in, and I quote, campaigning, talking with constituents, or publicly expressing views on local issues, unquote, without, quote, fear of being accused of bias or facing legal challenge, unquote. However, the Act does not prevent a challenge based on bias or predetermination arising from other factors. Evidence of personal bias arising, for example, because a member would be personally affected by a decision they're making, would still lead to an unsound decision, vulnerable to challenge, and could lead to a member code of conduct complaint. Neither does the Localism Act remove the requirement to ensure that decisions are reasonable in the legal sense. This means that at the time the decision is made, the council should be able to demonstrate all relevant matters have been taken into account and that irrelevant considerations have not influenced that decision. Consultation responses, the quality impact assessment, and in the case of planning, all material planning considerations should have been put forward and discussed at a meeting before a decision is taken, whatever prior indication an individual member may have given regarding his or her views on a particular matter. The rules were developed to ensure that councillors came into council discussions on, for example, planning applications with an open mind. You have a supplementary, Gary?
Yes, quite a long answer on that, I would think. In 2011, Woking Borough Council appeared in court, and the charge was against the developer and cutting down trees. The judge ruled that Woking Borough Council had acted illegally. And all I'm trying to say is, if that was the case, should not the council remove or amend the constitution so as compliant with that judge's order, which was 12 years ago? Thank you.
Well, thank you for the supplementary, Gary. I'm not familiar with that particular case, I'm afraid, so I'm not able to give you an answer. But I will try and investigate and send you a written reply.
Thank you, that will be appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Gary. So if we move on now to item 98, matters referred to the executive. None have been referred to us, so we can pass over that rather rapidly. We move on to matters of consideration, and this essentially is what follows in the agenda. Item 100 first, a proposal to change the collection methodology and containment of waste in the borough. This is on pages 17 to 64 of the agenda, and I'm going to ask Ian Shenton, the Executive Member for Environment, Sport and Leisure, to introduce this item.
Thank you. This report seeks approval to amend the weekly waste collection pattern to collect food waste every week, accompanied by dry recycling and residual waste taking turns. It will mean that the blue bags for residual waste will be replaced by wheel bins, in keeping with the Council's commitment to remove single-use plastic from its operations. As you've heard me tell the questioner earlier, we will be hanging on to the current green recycling stacks until the government makes its position clear on how many waste streams we're going to have to collect. Because any further investment in wheel bins may be wasted at this point in time. It's expected to, by this means, to reduce residual waste by diversion into the recycling streams, and that will reduce our waste management costs because handling the waste, the recycling streams is a lot cheaper than disposing of residual waste, and it will increase our recycling rate. Which at the moment is languishing kind of middle of the table compared to other English councils, 54%. Projections have been based on modelling by industry experts, both RAP and Eunomia. And the public consultation that we carried out yielded a significant majority liking or finding the change acceptable. I take any questions.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any comments or questions? First of all, Imogen and then Sarah.
Looking at this looks like a good, well-established strategy that's been successfully implemented across more than 85% of all councils in this country. It will save us more than $1 million per year from 2025. And I think everyone knows, especially councils, about time savings and income streams, so we can Alternative weekly waste collections are also expected to have the added benefit of increasing our recycling for this instance. Putting food waste and recycling out general waste is the most expensive method of disposing of waste. We will, of course, continue our weekly food waste collection, as you said, so that waste food is not left drying around for 2 weeks. But financially, I think this is a sensible move for us to take. Make that comment.
Thank you, Imogen. Sarah?
Thank you, not a question, but just some comments, and I'm interested to talk about the finance there, from the planetary obligations, I guess, that we have, you know. Lest we forget 2019, we declared the climate emergency to do everything within our power to reduce our carbon emissions, so why would we not do this? The evidence is there, it came to scrutiny, and it's abundantly clear, from a carbon perspective, this is the right thing to do, and 80% of councils up and down the country do it. I was in discussions with the Powers Council the other day, and the leading council more than 68%, and when they moved to alternate weekly collections, their recycling rates shot through the roof. And it's what we're seeing up and down the country, this is evidence-based. But I also want to point out that this is also in conjunction with other things. So we've also last year introduced the reusable clearing product scheme. So we're actually giving residents the opportunity to reduce what they dispose of as well. And there's obviously opportunities with reusable nappy schemes as well. So there are these opportunities, and we should always be looking to reduce before we recycle. But I completely support this. This is the right thing to do financially, environmentally, and I know our residents are behind this.
I think Lindsay wants to say something briefly too.
Ian, you didn't mention garden waste, can you confirm that continues on effective?
Yes, the garden waste scheme will not change. It will continue on a fortnightly basis as current, and it will continue to be subscription. But again, that's something that the government is toying with. Said, should it be fixed fee across the country, but we don't know what they're going to do. But at the moment, we will just continue as we are. And Imogen is absolutely right. The annual expected saving will be over £1 million for the full year. First year of implementation, 24-25, perhaps £500,000. It will depend to an extent of when we can get it up and running, which in part will be determined by the complexity of household survey that will need to be carried out and other things.
It's just worth noting perhaps that if those savings were not realised, we would be having to look for comparable savings in other areas of the council's activities. So it's vitally important that we secure those savings rather than end up trying to make savings in vital services for vulnerable people. So I think we're at the point where we should move to a recommendation. And we've got full recommendations on page 17 of your agenda. Can I see all those in favour? Show. That's unanimous. Thank you. We now move on to item 101, Biodiversity Net Gain Pilot Project, page 65 to 74 in your agenda. And again, this is Ian to present.
Thanks, Stephen. It's about the concept of biodiversity net gain. The UK is exceptionally nature depleted, probably the most nature depleted country in Europe. One thing that the government has come up with to try and reverse that is to mandate developers to achieve a biodiversity net gain. 10%. Ideally, they should be pushing for more, but they've settled for 10%, and it's on a metric which the government has devised. So a fixed metric which will be applied universally throughout the country. Where that can't be achieved within a development, government will allow gains to be achieved elsewhere by purchase of biodiversity net gain units. And they envisage this would become a competitive market. Whilst I'm not 100% happy with treating the environment as an economical market, it's what they're creating, and we have to react to that. And what this report proposes is that we react to that by introducing a pilot project to assess viability of selling BNG units to developers. Because any landowner can do so, and we know that already in the borough at least one large landowner is doing that. The trial is suggested to be in Ashenbury Park in Woodley, because that appears suitable for the pilot, but that would only be finally confirmed after some considerable engagement with the community and the town council. They would have to be happy. If they say, we don't want it in Ashenbury Park, we'll find somewhere else. But that is at the moment proposed because parts of that area are basically just grass, overgrown grass, basically for most of the area. It's cut once a year at the moment. When this went to OB scrutiny last week, they made some very valuable and pertinent comments. And they are contained in the supplementary paper which was distributed earlier today. It's unfortunate because this meeting was brought forward to bring it out further, and it closed the gap between overview scrutiny and this meeting, so that the recommendations of overview scrutiny could not be included in the main paper. It has to be done as a supplementary. But the recommendations of the supplementary are fully accepted, and I would like people to consider them alongside the original paper, because they will be implemented. And I thank the overview scrutiny for their comments.
Thank you. Are there any comments or questions? So,
Yes, just more comments on your question at the end. I just wanted to echo what Ian said. My overall concerns are to do with placing economic value in nature, which obviously removes intrinsic value, and I fundamentally don't agree with that, but appreciate that that is the direction this government's decided to take on this. I mean, given that we are the most nature-treated G7 country, and actually it's one of the worst countries in terms of nature depreciating in the world, we have to do something, and there are other mechanisms. But this is the way they've decided to do it, and it makes sense for us to do what's being proposed in this paper, given the direction the government wants us to travel in. So I support it in that sense. It was evident from the scrutiny meeting that this is actually a really complex subject. And so when it comes to consultation and all the comms, there's going to need to be a lot of work helping people to understand what this means, because it's inextricably linked with planning, which we know is an emotive subject. We need to make sure that people have the facts very clearly, so they're making informed choices when they are consulted on, and there needs to be a lot of work, I think, around that. The other thing I just wanted to add is, obviously, the government is going to be mandating, I think, to the end of this year, isn't it, the 10% biodiversity net gain. I do hope, though, and this is to my colleague Lindsay with the local plan, that we are still going to try and push and see if we can get 20% in there. I know that other local authorities are looking to see if we can do that, because 10% in one isn't enough.
okay, thank you. I think we all have qualms about commodification aspects of this, but it is a scheme that's been put forward, and there may be some advantages to us pursuing it, so the pilot is one way I think to explore. Page 65 of the agenda has 3 recommendations, but in the supplementary paper attached to this item, there are further 6 recommendations, and we are asking the executive to approve all of these. Okay, those in favour? Thank you. If we can move on then to item 102. This is procurement of true maintenance framework contract. It's on page 75, 85 of your agenda, and it's Ian again.
Yes, I do promise that somebody else will get a chance to speak. This is a more straightforward technical paper. Much of the council's tree work is currently procured on an as needed basis, if you like, ad hoc. It's procured for three parts of the council. Housing does some, highways, and of course green infrastructure. What the proposal is to establish a procurement framework containing a selection of tree surgeons to fulfil all the anticipated needs. So that would be some local tree surgeons who are not necessarily equipped for the really big jobs, but also we do need some to call on when we do get a big job, because often it can be in an emergency when you have to call upon the surgeons. Because this will be a 4-year framework, and will probably be valued at over £1 million over the 4 years, we do expect that we will achieve some more competitive scheduled rates as an anticipated outcome of this proposal.
Thank you, Ian. Are there any questions or observations? I think this is a very routine matter. Those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Thank you. That's unanimous. Right, we move on to 103, and Ian will believe this is not new. It's Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny Recommendations to the Executive. And I'm going to ask Prue, in the capacity as Executive Member for Children's Services, to speak to this item.
And I will be quite brief. Children's Services Overview and Scrutiny had a presentation from the Partnership Alliance back in November. It led to a good discussion. They made some recommendations. We've got to look at the Opta response, which is generally favourable and positive, and the proposal is to feed this through to the inclusion of cross-party working group to consider them as part of the action plan. And I think we should endorse that with these helpful suggestions.
Thank you, Prue. Are there any other comments and questions on this? Yes, I think I also would like to endorse the thanks to the Children's Services on this committee. So can we vote on this, please? Recommendation on page 89. Thank you very much. Again, unanimous. And if we now move on to item 104, which is on page 93, starts on page 93 of your agenda. It's essentially poverty strategy year 1 action plan, and this is Rachel, and her capacity as Executive Member for Quality Inclusion and Fighting Poverty.
Super, thank you. I'm very pleased to be bringing this report to the Executive on the progress we've made to date on the tackling poverty strategy. The strategy was signed off in the summer of 2022, and this report this evening reflects back on the first 8 months of the delivery. The tackling poverty strategy is centred around supporting our communities. You will see that we have made very strong progress over the last few months. This progress has been maintained while addressing the enormous additional and unexpected financial challenges which our communities have faced during 2022 and 2023, which led us to declare a cost of living crisis in the borough last autumn. Meeting the demands of the cost of living crisis and delivering on the strategy have rightly come together over the past winter, and I'll be talking about them both tonight. There's a lot of detail in this report, so I'd like to point out some key themes. The first theme is the scale of need in the borough. Many people in Woking Borough are well off, but this can make life harder for those who live on low incomes. The cost of living is higher in the borough than in many other places, and this higher cost of living is not reflected in the funding that we receive from central government to tackle poverty and low income. This means that many of our residents living on lower incomes have a huge struggle to pay for the basics. First Aid Children's Charity recently had to ask for donations of beds as local children are sleeping on cardboard boxes. Thousands of Woking residents are living in hardship. Woking Borough Council and our partners in the voluntary community sector have come together to support our communities, providing immediate help to residents struggling with high fuel bills. We've used funding from central government to distribute energy-saving devices to residents in need. With many people unable to afford to cook in a conventional oven, the energy-saving slow cookers and air fryers which we've distributed have meant that local residents have been able to continue to make hot meals. We've also given out blankets, drafted scooters and dehumidifiers to those in need to keep homes as warm and as dry as possible. The scale of the current crisis means that many of those who were previously able to manage are having to ask for help for the first time. We've made some very significant investments in making sure that the there, and that residents know where to go to get that help. We've extended the funding for the One Front Door initiative, trained library staff to give advice and signpost people to sources of help, and we delivered a booklet packed with advice and contacts to every borough home that we were able to reach. Secondly, we've taken steps to support our residents in the long term. We've looked at the root causes of poverty in the borough and at what we can do to support our residents in addressing these. We've lobbied the government and energy providers on the scandalous misuse of prepayment meters, which can push people further into debt or even without heating altogether. We've worked with many residents to make their homes more energy efficient. We've invested in improvements in debt advice to stop short-term pressures from spiralling into an unmanageable financial situation, and we've taken steps to prevent our residents from becoming homeless. The third and final point that I wanted to make tonight is partnership working. A close partnership between Woking Borough Council and our Partnership Alliance partners has been invaluable to the delivery of this strategy and to our response to the cost of living crisis. The Hardship Alliance and the Hardship Alliance Action Group have shared their insights and worked with officers and members to directly deliver help to those in need. Within the council, officers from different departments have worked together and with our partners to deliver energy-saving measures which keep residents' bills down while fighting the climate crisis, or to help residents pay their council tax while also receiving support to resolve their debt issues. I cannot thank you all enough for everything that you've done. Times continue to be very hard for our residents. We have a huge fight ahead just to stay still and fight against poverty. As the war in Ukraine, Brexit and climate change make life harder and harder for people. But we can be proud to have people in Borough of Woking who have worked together to meet the challenges of the crisis. This is a priority for the Lib Dems, and to demonstrate this, last month we made the choice to ring-fence £250,000 to expedite the work in the tackling poverty strategy. I'm therefore very pleased to recommend that the executive notes the progress made in the report tonight.
Thank you, Rachel. That's very impressive. This has been achieved already in trying to tackle poverty and current cost of living crisis. And I'd like to thank you for your work on this. It's been tremendous and it's been immensely important. I would echo your thanks to our partners in the Hardship Alliance. They have been absolutely brilliant in the work they've done. And we together have been able to mobilise people, resources, money and knowledge to try and tackle these problems. So this is a really impressive example of the benefits of partnership working. So thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments anyone wishes to know? Lindsay?
I just want to echo and thank everyone who's been involved. This has been an enormous amount of work, and unlike other situations, we've had this economic crisis has hit people who have not normally been involved and who are not so able or willing to ask for help. And I think this is a really good and important step forward.
Thanks, Lindsay. No more comments. I think we should go to vote on the recommendation, the executive notes, progress made in delivery, tackling poverty strategy, reading this last year. Those in favour? Thank you very much. It's carried unanimously. We move on now to the next item on the agenda, item 105, Cambridge Memorial Woodland. I think another piece of good news, and this is page 111. And just after a short break, Ian, it's back to you. On page 111.
Thank you, Stephen. The purpose of this paper is to bring to life an idea of Councillor Clive Jones, which quickly received cross-party support to establish a COVID memorial woodland for somewhere for quiet contemplation by people who lost loved ones as a result of the COVID pandemic. I propose this for a mixture of tree planting and wildflowers, and the planting and seeding is scheduled to be in this year's late planting season, so it will be from the autumn of this year into early 2024, provided that we can get approval and proceed at current pace. It will be sited at Rooksness Farm and it will effectively be an extension of California Country Park. It will thus take advantage of existing infrastructure and facilities such as the cafe and the looms, and will also be accessible from the existing bridle way. It will also contribute to the Council's Climate Emergency Action Plan tree planting commitment and to achieving the Tree Cities of the World status, which we're aiming for.
Thank you very much, Ian. I think Lindsay wants to make a comment and Sarah.
I'm very pleased that we've been able to deliver the COVID Memorial Wood. This has been a commitment of this group for a while. In addition, we're also extremely pleased to be able to save Woking Borough Council-owned Rook Nest Farm from having 270 houses built on this site. This is the first site we have been able to remove from the current draft local plan update. If the government does allow councils to take account of over-provision of dwellings in one local plan into a new developing local plan as currently proposed, other sites will follow. This will include those who received the greatest number of objections during the recent Regulation 18 consultation. I just repeat, this will include those that received the greatest number of objections during the recent Regulation 18 consultation. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Sarah?
Yeah, there's a point I'm going to make on something in a minute, but I just wanted just to read out a message I had from a resident yesterday when I saw the news that we were going to be considering this tonight, and he said, I felt so happy to see what the council is doing in memory of those lost to COVID and those they left behind. It'd be nice to have someone to go and reflect. I think he COVID took my dad. And I think we can all messages like this. This is a really positive thing for our residents. The other thing I just wanted to quickly pick up, there's a small detail in there talking about a sculpture. And just with my arts and culture hat on, that falls under that resident services title, which means a number of things. I just wanted to make sure that the commissioning of any sculpture is done in conjunction with the cultural officer that we have, and if we could just make sure they're involved in that, please, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. In a sense, the word sculpture is used loosely. It can be an installation of some description, and we get to determine what that will be. There will also be benches around the paths for people to sit and just contemplate for a while.
As long as they don't end up like the slug bench that we can't sit on top of it.
Sure, we'll try to avoid that. Thank you very much. That was very interesting, you're reading that out, Sarah. And it's clearly going to mean a lot to a lot of people. It's also going to contribute very effectively to our need for good tree cover to help us with climate emergencies. So it is, I think, doing a number of different important functions. So can we move to the recommendation on page 111, the two recommendations related to COVID Memorial Woodland. As identifications, its location, that Lisa's mentioned, and also approval of the implementation of this plan. So, those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried. And if we now move to item 156, this is officer responses to recommendations of preferred registered provider task and finish group. And I think it's my responsibility as executive member for affordable and social housing to introduce this item. The preferred registered providers task and finish group has been shared by Councillor Shirley Floyd, who's with us this evening on Teams. And in a few moments I'm going to ask Shirley to speak on this item. But I would just want to note that the officer response has been pretty positive. and also the ideas are going to be taken up, or already have been taken up, in the process of our negotiating partnership agreements with our preferred registered providers. So I think, I'm hoping that Shirley will agree, this is a pretty positive set of responses. So I'm going to turn over now to Shirley for her comments.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen, and good evening, everyone. The reason we set up the task force group in the first place were manifold, but it was largely to do with the sense that I had that the service levels in preferred provider housing in the borough there was a lot of disparity, and I felt that they weren't getting the same service as perhaps our HRA tenants, and so that was part of the reason that I felt that we were looking at. And the stars were aligned really, because we have the social housing bill going through Parliament at the moment, which is very much about the tenant first, and also the preferred provider agreement was up for renewal. So there were several things that made this a timely moment to set this up. And it was a very, very interesting process. We had heard evidence from a number of different groups. We had some good support from officers. We also did a small snapshot survey asking social housing tenants to answer certain questions, and it was quite interesting because clearly one of the things that all the housing associations have told us is that they do a lot of tenant engagement, and one of the things that we found was that most of the residents who answered the survey, for example, had no idea that there was any tenant engagement going on, and further investigation kind of emerged that really, well, a lot of them had tenant engagement, but it was very much one tenant who sat on their board, and their board met every 6 months, which is, in terms of when you look at our tenant engagement with TDIP, that really is not what we would describe as tenant engagement at all. So basically, the recommendations, I'm sure you've read them all, but are just to strengthen the partnership agreement. And I think that probably maybe the officers would even agree that the partnership agreement had previously been much more focused on the delivery of affordable housing in the borough, rather than the care of the tenants and the engagement with the tenants. So hopefully we can take the preferred providers along with us on the journey, because it's going to be in their best interests, actually, simply because of the social housing regulation bill, if nothing else. I commend the report to the executive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shirley, and thank you very much not only for your chairing of this Task and Finish group and its recommendations, which have been immensely helpful, but also your participation in the process of selecting the new preferred registered providers. You were very active in that process and very helpful. And I think the takeaway from this is, in the future, we will be endeavouring to ensure that the relationship with the preferred registered providers works in the interests of the tenants as well as the registered providers in the council. So thank you very much for your work on that. Can we move to a vote on the recommendations on page 125, which is essentially to approve the responses and to note the report of the Task and Finish group. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Thank you. And now we move on. Thank you, Shirley. And now we move on to item 107, and this is on page 142 of your agenda. This is also comes under my area of responsibility. This is delivering Ukrainian and Afghan refugee resettlement government grant allocation. This is, I think, good news story. It is a scheme that the government has devised to help certain categories of refugees in recognition of the pressure that refugees inevitably place on local authorities in terms of their housing that's available. We of course have enormous pressure on our housing stock here, so this is very welcome. It effectively is a subsidy to enable us to acquire 17 new homes, which will be for the use of Ukrainian and Afghan resettlement scheme refugees. This will be great news for those refugees. They will have a new home, a safe environment. It's good news for other residents in the borough in the sense that this adds to the amount of housing stock, so therefore ensures that we have slightly reduced competition for our housing stock. And the good news further on down the line is that when, as we hope will be the case, these Ukrainian and Afghan refugees are able to move on to their own properties or decide to move elsewhere, or even if the world becomes a better place, they're able to return to their own homes, we will be in a position where this housing stock is available for general use, so it will therefore be able to contribute to tackling our long-running problems with housing waiting list. So this is, I think, an unalloyed good news story. My only slight regret is the scheme only applies to Ukrainian and Afghan refugees. I think we would have preferred if it were more general. But this is the scheme the government has come up with, and we, I think, should welcome the opportunity to participate in it. So, if there are any questions, I'm trying to fill those.
As you've mentioned, we have lots of refugees who are living in the UK, not necessarily from Afghanistan and Ukraine. So why is this grant limited to Afghan and Ukraine?
Well, that's a decision made by the government, not by the council. It's based, I think, on certain ways in which refugees are categorised and funded by the government, or not by the government, and they have chosen these two particular groups to prioritise for this project. So we have no discretion over this. It's something that is decided by government, and we simply have to choose to remain to not be involved. Not to be involved would be foolish. So I think therefore that's the rationale for welcoming this, although with those reservations that we've expressed. So if there are no other questions or observations, can we move to the vote on this item? It's essentially to approve the release of community sums, because it's a subsidy by the government, but we still have to contribute to cost. So to release community sums and to defer our process of delegation to the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with me, the Deputy Leader of the Council and Executive Member for affordable social housing, decisions related to where this stock ends up, whether in the HRA or modern homes, and to approve the transfer of community sums. So, if you're happy with that, can you vote on it? Have those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried. Now we move to item 108. It's an unusual executive meeting where Paul has to wait this long for the chance to speak, but now he's getting his chance. So item 108, officer response recommendations the local cycling, walking and infrastructure plan task and finish group. This is on page 1.1 of your agenda. Thanks, Mary. So firstly, I'd like to thank officers and members of the Overdue Scrutiny Committee Task and Finish Group for their support and feedback during this process. I'm aware that the members didn't have time to read through in detail all of the appendices which are included in agenda item 109, as these were large and detailed, but were satisfied with the main document. I'm also pleased that the group accepted my suggestion of setting up an active travel group formed of overview and scrutiny members, with relevant ward members and relevant town and parish council to develop individual schemes before and after consultation. And I look forward to working with all relevant stakeholders in developing schemes through all the phases through to delivery. Thank you very much, Paul. And we've also got Alan Neal with us, who was the chair of this task and finish group. And so I think we want to come forward and comment on this at all.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've got the group met twice online, and I'd like to thank the officers that provided an awful lot of detail. Was far too much, really, was to read. There so much of it, but it was great to be able to get into the actual how the schemes were scored, what the feedback comments were from residents, how the schemes were developed based on how the residents' comments were taken forward as the schemes were developed. Yeah, and I'd thank Paul, the executive member, for his input, WPS, the consultants, and of course Democratic Services for facilitating all meetings. The LC route is a high-level document. It's a live document. There's no point us getting into the weeds of individual schemes, and so our main recommendations really were twofold. Really. First of all, was just clarifying the data in the main document, and secondly, as Paul said, what the way forward is for ensuring full engagement with stakeholders as these schemes are developed. And so I'd like to present this report to the executive.
Thank you very much, Al. If I make a kind of generic point about the value of task and finish groups, which are obviously appointed by relevant overview scrutiny committees, perhaps in the past there's been far too much emphasis on overview scrutiny activities on the scrutiny side, and not enough on the overview. And what we've seen this evening is two good examples of the way the overview side can work. It can actually enrich and give real benefit to the whole process of policy formation. So thank you very much to you, Al, for your task and finish groups work, and as to Shirley earlier on. I think these are great examples of the way in which we can bring in the expertise and interest of non-executive members to help strengthen what the executive does. Thank you very much. Unless there are any questions or observations, I suggest we go straight to the vote on this. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. It's carried unanimously. And if we now move on to the plan itself, it's item 109, and it's Phillips Newport.
Thank you, Mr. Stephen.
So this is on page 165. Yeah. The local cycle and walking infrastructure plan has been developed using Department for Transport guidance that ensures that evidence and approved auditing methods are consistent across the country. Active Travel England has been set up by the government as the funding body to evaluate submissions when they are recorded for bids to highway authorities. The borough has been successful in being awarded revenue funding of 127,000 and 4.4 million of capital, whilst the local cycle walking infrastructure plan is in development. Having an approved plan will provide the authority with a better chance of obtaining future funding as Active Travel England moves away from authorities that do not have one. The plan is attached to the report as a link on page 168. Quite a lengthy document, and there's an awful lot of appendices to read through. And has been subject to 2 separate public engagement exercises. However, it will remain live as a document and reviewed once every 6 months, with schemes being developed, delivered, and new schemes being added. The plan will also be a helpful document to obtain other external funding sources, such as from developers and other government initiatives. 2019 Department of Transport data indicates that journeys below 5 miles represented 58% of all private car journeys in the UK, providing the biggest opportunity for switching short car trips to active travel modes. Walking and cycling are ideal modes of transport for long trips and convenient options for regular exercise. They are low cost, accessible, healthy, environmentally friendly and efficient. We also need to be prepared for the e-scooters once the government has made it clear on a decision. Finally, getting more people to walk and cycle will help us respond to the climate change emergency and tackling congestion on our roads. This is a great opportunity to start to transform our borough and provide our residents and visitors an excellent alternative to a private car. And I'd like to thank officers for their hard work and support in developing the LC WIP to get it to this stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. I'm sure we'll all endorse your thanks to the officers on that. And I'm now going to ask you to endorse the adoption of the LC WIP, or the local cycle and walking infrastructure plan, as the council's strategic plan for active travel. Sorry, which I didn't realize you wanted to speak, and you as well.
Super, yeah. I just wanted to add that this is absolutely great news from the point of view of tackling poverty in the borough. A lot of our residents who live on low incomes do rely on cycling or walking to get to work, to get to school, or to further education, to meet friends, and many of them use it as pleasure and exercise as well. So everything that we can do to make cycling, walking, and wheeling generally easier for these residents is very good news. It's great to see such a long-term plan.
Yeah, thanks. I'd just like to echo what Rachel said. Obviously, we make an assumption that everyone can afford to buy a car, and they can't. So we have to make sure that we have the infrastructure that meets all our residents' needs. I wanted to echo your responses. I appreciate how challenging this has been. It's an emotive subject, and as speaking personally, as a family of 4 that mostly cycle, you know, having had 2 incidences where my son, who is a secondary school child, has been hit by a car, and he's also had on the Reading Road, I'm not going to call it a cycle lane, I'm going to call it a painted target line, let's call it, has had a car actually swerve in to scare him on purpose. So actually, this is about safety as well. It's emotive because we see too many cyclist deaths, but also we need to make sure that we're segregating for pedestrians as well, so that pedestrians feel safe. And I know there's been, it's been a bit of a political football this, and I don't understand why, because this is about providing choice, which provides safety for people. And On top of that, obviously, there's our climate responsibilities as well as air quality. We know that pollution coming from vehicles is quite literally killing people, shortening lives, and all the illnesses that go with that. So thank you to you for persevering with this. I know it's been a challenge, and also thank you to officers, and obviously particularly to Bob Curtis and his team. Thank you.
Just perhaps just in that vein, worth adding that need be no sense of competition between cars and cyclists, pedestrians, all different means of moving people around. And in fact, those people who own the car that choose to cycle shorter distances before, that reduces the number of cars on the road and therefore the congestion that delays people travelling cars. So this is a win-win-win, I think, for all concerned. So I was a bit premature, but are we now ready to go to the vote on this? I think we are. I thought you were about to say something, but you're not. So let's go to the vote, and that's carried unanimously. So thank you. And if we can now move to item 110 on the agenda, and this is again reports on page 179, and this is off-street car parking charges.
The last time off-street car parking charges rose in Woking was over 5 years ago. Despite rising costs in providing the service, the previous administration didn't keep pace with those costs. During the autumn of 2021, the previous Conservative administration did propose to cover the growing shortfall with a car parking recovery plan that was published in the Corporate and Community Overview Scrutiny Committee report on the 24th of November 2021, with an estimated additional income of 500,000. If they had gone ahead with that, it would have made a significant reduction in the financial shortfall that we now face. But unfortunately, the previous administration failed to deal with it. And we are now picking up the consequences of their lack of action. Instead, they chose to plunder the reserves where they took 2.2 million. The executive approved a schedule of new charges on the 24th of September 2022, with the intent to introduce these during early January this year. We've always known that raising parking fees wouldn't be popular, as this would be the first time in over 5 years, and small increases in the past would have lessened the impact now. However, we are facing our worst financial pressures in decades. We must find a way of continuing to maintain our highways to the current standard, including filling of potholes, and without affecting the critical services that our more vulnerable residents rely on. However, the Conservatives called in the decision by the executive and submitted a petition for council. That was referred to the November meeting of this executive. Following approval of this executive to proceed with the changes to the charges, the draft traffic regulation order notice was advertised on the 15th of December 2022. But the standard 21-day period is extended to 44 days due to the Christmas and New Year holiday period. 156 objections and 122 comments were received, and it's worth noting that 35 of these, 12%, were for Shinfield Green, where no charges are planned. This is likely to have been related to the e-petition started by War Councillor Jackie Rance, signed by 88 people. What a pity that they were misled. The delays caused by the calling and the petition means that any new charges now will not commence until mid-June. This is a delay of 5 months,
and a forecasted loss of revenue to this authority of around £225,000. £225,000 of vital money lost, which could have gone towards the service, including helping maintain our roads and footways, the filling of potholes that always make the news at this time of the year across the whole country. Unfortunately, there is still misinformation being circulated, and I want to make it clear that the park and ride sites are not, and I repeat, not losing money. They are giving a balanced budget. Turning to the recommendation by officers, it is recommended to accept the increases to the parking charges as detailed in Appendix 1, as indicated in point 2 on page 179. However, I have read through the objections and comments made, and I would like to thank everyone, including the four that supported the changes, for their feedback. With that in mind, two key themes emerged where we will be able to assist against the significant financial constraints that we face. The first amendment that I wish to propose is a flat rate of £1 charge for the evening, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m, and remove the £2 fee. This has been made to lessen the impact of the residents attending evening activities and local businesses. The second amendment is a reduction in the all-day charge to £7 across all off-street car parks in Woking Borough. This is to assist employees working in retail and other businesses all day. These changes are then reflected in the season tickets, now proposed at £950 for 12 months, and residence tickets at £161 for 12 months. Again, it is unfortunate that this information has been circulated about someone parking 5 days a week all day, costing £2,000. This is simply untrue, as a season ticket is now proposed at £950 and enables someone to use it 7 days a week. The estimated cost for these amendments will be around £40,000 over the year and will be covered by the budget agreed in the February full council. The full amendments are shown in the supplementary paper, and they are highlighted on each of the pages. And I would recommend accepting the officer recommendations except for point 2, which is as per the amendment. Okay, thank you, Paul. Are there any questions or observations? Where this time? Go ahead, Rachel.
Super. I just wanted to say thank you very much, Paul, to you and to the officers for the work that you've done, to the voices below the paperworkers in the borough and making that reduction in the rate of charge. You know, you've been doing some terrific work to provide people with a full range of options. We spoke, you know, a few minutes ago about what you've done with the walking and cycling infrastructure. You've also been doing a lot of really good work to keep bus services going. But there are a lot of people who do vital but very often low paid work in the town centres, your hairdressers, the retail workers, the people who work in the coffee shops and the restaurants, who don't really have any choice but to drive in, certainly at the moment. You know, particularly if you're less mobile, or you maybe, you know, you've got to drop the children off at school on your way in. So it is really important that we keep the costs as low as we can for them. And I think what we've done here is we've got a really good balance between looking after the finances of the council and accommodating those low paid workers. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. I also like to say thank you to Paul for all the work he's put in on this and the officers who have given him statements for is a welcome response to the comments received, and demonstrates that we are listening and prepared to make amendments where those are justified. So thank you for that. Can we move then to the recommendation with the proviso that under item 2, which is to remove the increases as detailed in appendix 1, those are now replaced by these amended charges. So just to make sure that's clear. The second recommendation relates to the amended charges, not the original ones in the agenda. So those in favour, please show. Thank you. Thank you. That's carried unanimously. And if we move to item 111, which you again for, so I'm going to speaking. It's not possible to stop you now. You're on 111, moving traffic enforcement. Thank you, sir. Page 189, sorry, for instructions. The Department for Transport announced in May 2022 that local authorities can apply powers to enforce against moving traffic offences, which can currently only be enforced by the police under criminal law. The application process for local highway authorities was published by the DFT, and all required steps, including public consultation and consultation with Thames Valley Police, have been completed. An application was submitted to the Department for Transport to meet their Tranche 2 submission deadline of the 15th of February 2023. The application was based on 11 main sites, shown on page 190, which were identified and selected via a review of complaints received, officer knowledge, and feedback from the local police. Traffic studies were completed at all sites with a long list, and the 11 sites showing the highest level of driver non-compliance were selected to be included in the application. If our submission is successful, the Department of Transport have indicated that the necessary powers will be granted in June 2023. However, the DFT has stipulated that warning notices should be sent for a period of 6 months from the installation of a camera when motorists commit an offence for the first time. Subsequent offences by the same vehicle stroke keeper would receive a penalty charge notice. It should be noted that it is an existing offence to drive against any of these restrictions listed in the 11 sites, or any other restrictions across the borough. Once established, we can extend these powers to cover additional sites where restrictions already exist, and to establish a programme of school streets subject to consultation. I therefore propose that the officer recommendation of 1.7 are approved and noted as it's stipulated on page 189. Thank you very much, Jim. Are there any questions or observations? Can we move straight to the vote on those 7 recommendations? You do have a question, is it? Sorry.
I'm very pleased to see that Milton Road is on the list of sites that we want traffic offences. Residents in that area have their lives blighted by cars speeding through the buses only entrance on where it leads Broad Street. So the remaining question is, how long will it be until we get the equipment on site and start monitoring?
As I alluded to, the DFT are looking to provide us with powers in June 2023, and the plan would be that we have these operational by the autumn of this year. Okay, and move to a vote on the recommendations 1 to 7 on page 189. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. And if we now move on to item 112 on page 289 of your agenda, so I can move on 100 pages, I'm afraid, to climate emergency petition paper, and this is Sarah who will be reading this.
Thank you. It's been a cool English show this evening, isn't it? Before I actually talk about this paper, I just wanted to highlight there's been actually quite a number of papers that come from colleagues that actually are climate emergency linked, and it's really good to see a number of papers going forward that will have this with our climate emergency declaration, the actions that we need to take that. And I hope going forward that we're going to see more and more of this happening from across the whole executive, given that climate change is linked to everything, linked to our entire economy, to our social systems and everything, and doesn't discriminate. It does discriminate, so is the point I was going to make in terms of the way it impacts people, so it impacts income families more. It's just an interesting fact here. Climate change has displaced so many people around the world, 80% of them women, so it has impacted different people in different ways. Coming back to this in particular, I'm really pleased that I'm bringing forward these two schemes. So first we've got Solar Together, and then we've got our home decarbonisation service. I'll just touch on Solar Together first. This is actually a company called iChooser that it's basically working on economies of scale for our residents. We can't do this as a local authority ourselves because we wouldn't have enough households to make economies of scale work, so we've been working with the other Berkshire authorities on this. And iChooser come in, they will vet local solar panel installers, and what we do, we work with them from a marketing perspective, so the very small costs that we have in there from our marketing capabilities, we will go out to households that will be eligible to have solar panels on their properties, and people can sign up. iChooser would vet the suppliers, they would go out and quote for the work, and once they've got the quote, the residents there, they get to choose whether they go forward or not. So they initially they don't have to make that commitment there and then until they've got their quote in front of them. So they get the economies of scale benefit, and they also get the benefit of having approved vetted installers, which is really important because it's not always a financial barrier. Sometimes there's nervousness around this. What we don't want is like the double glazing cycle, which you can get from solar panel installers. We will make a small commission from that, so we will recover the cost and possibly a very small amount from that from iChooser. Lots of other local authorities have done this. For the most part, it's been positively received. The only minor things I would say is on maybe poor communication and setting resident expectations. We need to be very clear that this doesn't bump you up the list or anything. We know that the cost of living crisis, more people are looking into solar to generate their energy needs from a security and cost perspective, and there's quite a long waiting list. It's not going to change those waiting times, but this is about having that assurance that you've got better trusted suppliers and those economies of scale. So this is a really positive thing. We're looking to launch in the spring, and I urge anybody who's considering getting solar PV for their roof to put an expression of interest in once you've got that letter. The other one is the home decarbonisation service, which we've been talking about for a little while now. We're finally at the stage where we're able to do a soft launch this spring and a full launch in the autumn in time for when the temperature drops again. So we again recognise that one of the barriers to making home improvements is that lack of knowledge about where to go. Where do you even begin? And what should we be looking for when you're talking to suppliers and installers? How do you know that you're getting the right information and not being missold? It's about having that impartial advice. Again, there's a very small amount of money to put software, and the software is twofold. It allows residents to put in their address, it will give them an EPC rating, and give them some suggested measures, but it also allows us in local authority to look at areas of the borough in particular that may have lower EPC ratings. What we're trying to do is raise those EPC ratings up. It's not necessarily the best measure, it's the most effective measure based on what the government are measuring in terms of properties. We have a fantastic energy team. We've also got our customer services team being trained as well as our climate team. to be able to then offer that impartial, trusted advice to people to make those changes. And that could be changes to installation, it could be solar, it could be electric forms of heating. So this is really positive. And I've gone into quite a bit of detail now. I've done a pool, I'm sorry.
Don't worry.
So, have you got any questions?
I think it would be difficult to think of any questions after such a full presentation. But thank you very much, Sarah, for all the work you and the officers supporting you have put into this. I know this is your real passion, and we're very grateful to have somebody with your passion leading on this. And this is really encouraging. I think we all would be very happy to endorse this very fully. We'll do so right now. Thank you very much. Everyone has supported that, so thank you. We're going to move now on to item 113, the shareholders report on page 397. Those of you who were particularly alert at the beginning of the meeting might have noticed that three of us declared an interest as non-executive directors of local authority companies. David and I all declared an interest. Although I don't think I'm perhaps being overly punctilious here, I think in the interests of complete transparency, I should ask Dimitri, who has had remarkable little to do with saying this evening, to actually lead on this item, the shareholders report. It's a fairly standard item. I don't think it needs to change the correct thing.
No, these are reports into our wholly owned companies of Woking Borough Council, and I welcome reports to the company use public money. And it's important for us to show transparency in how our money is being managed and used by them. It has been a number of years since we've had any visibility of the financials of these subsidiary companies, as it was not provided under the previous administration. And I hope that the sharing of this information will continue ongoing. So that's a bit of any questions from this. So I move to vote to accept these reports.
I think you should.
Okay, those of us who haven't, hang on, put your hand down.
Oh, sorry.
So everybody else accepts them. Okay, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you very much. These are the rough edges there, but we've got through. So, item 114, reports from the Overgreen Scrutiny Committee, I believe there is none. And I think that formally concludes the meeting of business. So thank you very much, everyone, and again, big thank you to the officer team for enduring this evening, but also for all of your support and help over the years of the year. It is truly appreciated. Thank you very much. Thank you, and good evening to everyone.